So, as you all know, we've gone through and read all in all, what is I'd consider a pretty neutral Brexit book. It doesn't really favour leave or remain. It basically tells you these are the realities of what's going to happen, gives you the facts on the situation, potentially what the outcomes may be, both good and bad, and some are nightmarish. We've already, I read the chapter on the World Trade Organization. That is a potential political minefield. So I thought, well, okay, if there's I've read what I think most people would say was a pro-Brexit, even though I think, anti-Brexit book. I really don't think it comes across as that. I think it's pretty much neutral. So I thought, why not read a pro-Brexit book? And this is the one we've got here. Brexit, Why We Won. Explaining a Historic Vote to Your Friends by Andrew Martha. And it took me less than a day to read. I see very little point, and I wish, to be honest, I hadn't got it. This book is completely pointless, because it does, I hope, other, pro-Brexit books, because now I'm going to have to go and spend money on trying to find another pro-Brexit book to try and find a decent counterbalance, because this is pure garbage. It really is. Basically, all Andrew does for, how many pages is it? Yeah, 100 and... Oh no, sorry. Let's be reasonable. Those are his other books. Yeah, for 89 pages, up to his conclusion. 89 pages of... We won, whoop-de-doo, and basically going over nothing. I mean, one of the claims he makes is that British people voted for Brexit because they felt the EU was interfering with their lives. So, can you give me an example, Andrew, of where the EU has interfered with your life personally? No. And that seems to be the typical strategy of people who are like Andrew, are pro-inexplicably Brexit, because there's more going on, particularly as has been discussed in this book, which I highly recommend, because that book explains what's going to happen with trade deals, economy, immigration, the fact that we've got a particularly good immigration system, even though you think we didn't when you listen to people like Nigel Farage and so forth. But that's what Andrew does in this book. He just blathers on. He literally does blather for 89 pages of, well, Brexit had to happen. It was, a political inevitability because, people felt Europe was interfering with our lives. And I'm like, well, can you give me an example, Andrew? And if he sees this, Andrew, please do leave an example below of the things you claim are supposedly happening in this book. Now, I know you've written 2 more, but to be honest, given this, what you've written in this, I am not going to bother reading those 2 other books, because if that is your attitude, then I don't know why I should bother with your 2 other books you've written on Brexit. Because I'm going to have to go and find another one now somewhere. I don't know what I'll get. If anyone's got any suggestions, I'll be more than happy to. But as long as it's not by this guy, I'll be fine. Because in terms of what this book set out to do, I was on the front cover explaining a historic vote to your friends. If, let's say, you were pro-Brexit and you had people people who were, wanted to vote Remain, and you bought this book and as an attempt to maybe try and convince your friends that Brexit was a good idea, I very much doubt you would come away with any arguments. I mean, put it this way, reading this book has certainly not convinced me Brexit was a good idea. I mean, people, you can say, "Oh, I'm biased and that I was pro Remain," but here's an example, Andrew. I'm from Barnsley, not your liberal London elite you claim are supposedly, running over. Now, Barnsley, Andrew, I think you may know this. Barnsley was one of the highest towns in the UK to vote Leave, but Andrew, people in Barnsley know fuck all about the EU when it comes down to it. If you don't believe me, come to Barnsley sometime, find out for yourself. And I will point you to an organisation that has been EU funded by the EU, that has set up 600 plus businesses within the Barnsley area, contributing not only to our local economy, but the national economy as well. Do people care that's happened? No. The town centre itself has undergone in the past 2 years massive regeneration. This has not been funded by the Barnsley Council or even the UK government. It's been funded by EU money. And yet, we've had all this stuff, and yet people still went, "Oh, gotta leave, sovereignty, immigration." Immigration in this entire debate, I would basically say, has been a ridiculous argument to begin with, because you don't want to discuss it properly. Sovereignty, you don't seem to understand the fact that when we go and do trade deals with other nations, we will be selling off our sovereignty through these trade deals. So you can bemoan the fact, as you do in this book, "Oh, we're losing our sovereignty." Well, we're going to lose our sovereignty when we go and do trade deals with the US. For example, we're probably going to lose NICE. A lot of workers' regulations that we have in the UK, a lot of these US companies might go, "Well, we want to loosen these regulations to build factories, whatever. We want less regulations." And you're just like, well, that's the stuff that we are going to lose through these, and is going to be discussed in these negotiations. And as has been discussed in this book, we are woefully unprepared for such negotiations. So, still to this moment, if you are pro or anti-Brexit, whatever, I still recommend to you Brexit, What the Hell Happens Next. Andrew, your book is shit. It gave nothing. It's like listening to someone arguing, and then when you try and make a point or you try and stop them because they've gone on and you're like, how am I going to deal with this diatribe? I feel like I've been shouted at in book form by saying, "Oh, well, you weren't listening to me." And that's how I felt reading this book. It's a colossal waste of time. Don't waste your money on it like I did. And the final insult to this book, a guy who says we need to do things, more in the UK, this book was printed in Poland. So Andrew here has benefited from the EU, but